Have you ever wondered what the real price of freedom is? What does it actually mean to be free? Are we really capable of understanding what it costs to live a free life? Or have we gotten so used to our invisible prison that we don't even realize freedom demands surrender, a radical change? Most of the time we think of freedom as something simple, just a word that sounds good, something everyone wants. But we rarely stop to think about the painful road it demands from us. Real freedom isn't handed out for free. It demands deep sacrifices, hard choices, and the courage to face situations that shake our very understanding and resilience. The real question is, are we willing to pay the price for it? Picture this for a second. Being trapped in something you can't escape. Something that crushes your soul, your body, and your spirit. What if suddenly you had the chance to break free, but the path ahead was filled with challenges so overwhelming that the fear of failing could easily paralyze any desire to move forward? Yeah, life throws these barriers at us sometimes, moments when we feel completely stuck, just like the Israelites standing in front of the Red Sea, a massive, raging wall of water that seemed like the end of the road. The path to freedom was literally blocked in front of them. But does freedom show up when you face the obstacle? Or when you cross it? When you confront what's most terrifying on your path? So, what happens when you're standing face to face with a wild sea, an endless desert, and a promise that feels far away but still powerful? What's waiting beyond what your eyes can see? Think about it. So often, our greatest battles come from situations that look completely impossible. Moments when we're right in the middle of the sea, feeling like there's no way forward, no way back. The Red Sea wasn't just a physical barrier for the Israelites. It was the symbol of a transition, from a life of oppression to a life of possibility. They were standing at the edge of a whole new reality. But to get there, they had to take a bold step, straight into the unknown. Would you, like them, be brave enough to take that step, to face something that feels absolutely impossible? The truth is, most of the time, what holds us back isn't the obstacle itself, but the fear of not being able to overcome it. So ask yourself, what would you do if the only way out was through something you never thought you could handle? When the Israelites stood in front of the Red Sea, sure, they were staring at a wall of water, but honestly, they were also staring straight at themselves. What goes through someone's mind when they're standing at what feels like the end, but also, somehow, the chance to start again? Crossing that sea required way more than physical strength. It demanded courage. What looked like a death sentence actually became the path to life. And what does that teach us about the storms in our own lives? Sometimes, what we believe is total destruction is actually the moment that opens the door to radical change, to rebirth, to a brand new chapter, even when everything seems lost. That's the real price of freedom, facing the fear of death, whether that's physical, emotional, or mental, and walking straight through those wild, crashing waves with faith. This is where it becomes crystal clear. The road to freedom is never a straight line. Escaping slavery? It's full of curves, cliffs, and stormy waters. There's no easy way out, and that's something we all seriously need to understand. Life is full of moments when the choices feel way too hard to make. Sometimes, like the Israelites, we find ourselves stuck between the sea and the desert, totally unsure which way to go. And it's in that exact breaking point, when everything feels shaky, that God challenges us to take that first step, the one that'll finally pull us out of whatever's keeping us trapped. But the real question is, do we have the guts to believe that even with the angry sea and the dry, empty desert right in front of us, there's actually a path of life waiting on the other side? But then, what's on the other side of the water? After the crossing, the Israelites didn't exactly walk into paradise. Nope, they walked straight into the desert, a dry, brutal, unforgiving place, but also a place of testing and revelation. What looked like the happy ending was actually just the start of an entirely new journey, because real freedom isn't just about breaking chains. It's a never-ending process of growth, learning, and suffering too. Crossing the Red Sea didn't mean their problems were over, not even close. Now they had to face the desert of uncertainty, of hunger, thirst, doubt. They had to learn to trust God even when they couldn't see what was next, to realize that even in the worst moments, His presence never left them. The real price of freedom? It's to keep going, even when the road ahead feels totally unknown. Crossing that sea, man, it wasn't just about leaving physical slavery behind. They were walking away from fear, from pain, but also from something deeper, from the comfort that slavery, twisted as it was, had given them. Because as awful as it was, at least they knew what to expect every day. The routines were familiar. And freedom? Freedom meant walking into the unknown. And that's scary. Change, no matter how badly we want it, comes with a heavy dose of fear. So, here's the question. What happens when you step out of your comfort zone and into a whole new reality? Just like the Israelites, we all have to learn to let go of the false sense of safety that keeps us stuck, even if it means facing the terrifying unknown. So, what about you? What are you willing to leave behind to grab hold of true freedom? Because honestly, the price of freedom is often measured by how much trust you're willing to have in a future you can't fully see. What's waiting on the other side of the water? The answer: it's in your choice to move forward, even when you have no idea what's waiting for you. After leaving Egypt, the Israelites stepped into a brand new chapter, but it wasn't the one they imagined. The Promised Land, that beautiful place God had told them about, it wasn't waiting right on the other side. What they walked into was the desert, dry, empty, ruthless, a vast wasteland where every basic need was a constant fight. The desert wasn't a place to relax. It was a training ground. They went from one kind of oppression to a whole new type of battle, a battle that wasn't just physical anymore, but deeply psychological and spiritual. And this is where the real fight for freedom starts to show up. Because the Pharaoh was gone, but now they were facing something even sneakier, their own doubts, their own daily struggles. Just picture it: scorching heat during the day, freezing cold at night, hunger, thirst, the constant question echoing in their minds. Where's the water? Where's the food? Where's God? When it feels like our needs are bigger than anything else. The desert doesn't hand out easy answers. It's not the place where God shows up with flashy miracles every 5 seconds. Nope, it's where their faith was tested to the absolute limit. They started questioning everything: God, Moses, even themselves, even the choice to leave in the first place. And right here is where you realize the Exodus wasn't just a physical journey from one place to another. It was an internal journey, a transformation, a painful but necessary process of growth and spiritual maturity. The desert became the place where their character was forged in the heat of desperation. But here's the twist. It's also in that very desert that they started learning one of the most important lessons of all, something that totally flipped their understanding of what freedom really means. God's provision? It doesn't show up the way they wanted or when they expected. It wasn't about getting everything they wanted. It was about receiving exactly what they needed. And not just that, but at the right time, in the right way. Instead of handing them a life of comfort, God was teaching them to rely on Him, to trust His wisdom, to believe in His perfect timing. Little by little, they started to understand that real freedom isn't just about not being oppressed anymore. It's about learning to trust something way bigger than the chaos around you. And it's right there, in the middle of that brutal, unforgiving desert, that the real meaning of freedom finally starts to unfold. Freedom, as they quickly learned, isn't some passive, comfy state where all your needs get magically met without effort. Freedom is the ability to trust in something far greater than yourself, to believe in a divine power that, even when you can't see it, is working behind the scenes, guiding you, sustaining you, carrying you. The desert wasn't just a place of lack, it was a classroom for the soul, a place where hearts were reshaped, where minds were transformed, and where the foundations of true freedom were finally laid. It's in this exact context that the core lesson of the Exodus journey shows up. Real trust isn't about circumstances, it's about the faithfulness of the one who's guiding you. Trust isn't some fuzzy feeling that depends on everything going your way or on getting quick answers. Real trust is built in perseverance when the road ahead feels blurry and uncertain. It's born when you're taken to a place where nothing else can hold you up except your faith. It's right there, in the desert seasons of life, when everything feels lost, that our trust in God gets tested and refined. And just like the Israelites, we're constantly challenged to trust, even when the pressure feels absolutely unbearable. In the end, the desert becomes the ultimate classroom for anyone truly chasing freedom. It forces us to look deep inside ourselves, to question our values, our priorities, and our very understanding of what it actually means to be free. The desert, then, isn't just a place of lack. It's a place of transformation. It's where we learn that freedom isn't handed to us from the outside. It's won through trust, through surrender, and through depending on God to carry us through every challenge until finally we step into the promised land He prepared for us. Eventually, the Israelites did reach the promised land, that long-awaited place filled with abundance, peace, and the chance to finally live as a free people. After decades of suffering, slavery, and exile, their dream was right there, within reach. But in a crazy twist, that moment wasn't the end of the journey. It was actually the moment where the real journey began. Because the promised land, for all its beauty and blessings, wasn't some magical place where all their problems disappeared. Nope. It demanded something deeper. It required the Israelites to adapt, to step up, and, most importantly, to remember where they came from and what the desert had taught them. And so the question becomes, what happens when you finally reach the thing you've been chasing for so long? What does it actually mean to live in freedom? Does life turn into some perfect fairy tale the moment you hit your goals? Or is the real meaning of freedom something way deeper, something that goes far beyond what you can see or touch? Because when the Israelites set foot in the promised land, they were hit with a reality that most of them didn't see coming. The promised land wasn't just a place of peace and prosperity. It was also a battlefield, a place where new fights had to be fought. And these battles weren't just against outside enemies, but against their own weaknesses, their own fears. Even after arriving at the place they'd dreamed about for so long, they still had to learn what it truly meant to live in freedom. And right there, the story takes a surprising turn. Real freedom doesn't come from the absence of struggle. It comes from understanding that freedom demands constant vigilance and faithfulness. The moment the Israelites stepped into the promised land, the fight didn't end, it just changed. What looked like the finish line was actually the start of a brand new chapter, one of growth and maturity. They weren't under Pharaoh's rule anymore, but now they faced a different kind of slavery. The slavery of ego, of laziness, of temptation. What seemed like a place of rest and peace quickly revealed itself to be a place of constant decisions. Choices that determined whether they'd hold on to their freedom or lose it. Real freedom was never meant to be some permanent, comfy state. It's an ongoing journey, full of change, growth, and yes, challenges. Freedom, as the Israelites learned, demands constant awareness. Because even in the most abundant lands, the enemies inside us can still threaten our peace. Just like the Israelites, every single one of us faces the challenge of turning promises into real, lived experiences. When we finally get what we've been fighting for, how do we handle that abundance without slipping into greed, pride, or selfishness? How do we stay faithful to a bigger purpose when the temptation to control, to hoard, to dominate starts creeping in? The promised land asks for more than shallow obedience, more than just following a list of rules. It demands deep obedience, a commitment that doesn't just change behavior, but transforms who you are at your core. This kind of obedience comes from a heart aligned with something way bigger than yourself, a desire not just to win, but to serve, to live according to God's design. Living in the promised land takes a different kind of faithfulness. It's a faithfulness that gets tested, not just in suffering, but in abundance, in prosperity, and in the sneaky struggles that show up after the promise is fulfilled. This obedience isn't forced. It's born out of gratitude, out of the realization that everything we have ultimately comes from God. So real freedom. It's not about reaching some point where all the fights are over. It's an invitation to live a life full of conscious, intentional choices, where every decision either pulls you closer to true peace or further from it. Peace that doesn't come from perfect circumstances, but from knowing how to live faithfully with whatever God has placed in your hands. But here's the thing. The Israelites' story doesn't end with them marching triumphantly into the promised land. Nope. As the years rolled on, new challenges started creeping in. Challenges that weren't so obvious at first, but were way more dangerous. New pharaohs started showing up, but this time, they weren't foreigners from distant lands. They weren't enemy kings. Imposing their will, they were their own leaders. The very people who were supposed to guide, protect, and care for them turned into the new oppressors. And that raises a brutal, uncomfortable question. What do you do when the very people who were supposed to protect your freedom become the ones stealing it? What happens when oppression doesn't come from outsiders, but from those you trusted? The ones who once promised to lead you in the name of freedom, but end up chaining you all over again. Yeah, it's a disturbing reality, but it's also a brutally honest one. The Israelites, after all they'd been through, after finally reaching freedom, found themselves trapped again, not in chains made of iron, but in something far worse: the corruption, the greed, the exploitation of their own leaders. Slavery had come back, just wearing a different mask. And that's the harsh truth. Sometimes the biggest threats to our freedom don't come from outside, but from within our own systems, from within our own hearts. When the oppression comes from the very people who are supposed to protect us, the fight for freedom becomes even harder to see and even harder to fight. And so the Israelites were caught in a vicious cycle. Freedom won, freedom lost, freedom restored, over and over again. And this cycle wasn't just random history, it was a brutal lesson. Freedom is never something you win once and keep forever. Life isn't a straight line to perfection. Real freedom means accepting that you might have to fight the same battles more than once, not just against the enemies out there, but against the ones inside, against the corruption that creeps into our own systems, or the complacency that settles into our own souls. This never-ending fight to protect freedom is a reflection of the fact that life itself is a constant battle, where every victory, no matter how big, demands constant effort to hold on to. Freedom isn't some comfy destination. It's a process, a daily choice, a commitment to renewal, over and over again. So, what's the takeaway from all this? What do we learn from the Israelites' story? It's simple and brutal. Real freedom demands constant vigilance, and it demands the willingness to fight, not just the enemies outside, but the ones hiding inside. The fight for freedom is never simple, it's never easy. It takes courage to face the struggles that come from the world around us. But it also takes wisdom to recognize and confront the enemies that rise up inside our own hearts and inside the very institutions we once trusted. Because those enemies, they can be apathy, complacency, corruption, selfishness, pride. Real freedom isn't just about beating the bad guys out there. It's about staying awake, staying aware, and being ready to fight the forces that try to enslave your heart and your mind, whether they come from outside or from within. And it's exactly in this process, in this constant fight for freedom, that we discover our true purpose. The goal was never to reach some perfect, untouchable state. The goal is to keep walking the journey, even when the road gets tough, messy, and full of challenges. Every moment of oppression, every cycle of lost freedom, teaches us something priceless about what it really means to be free. True freedom isn't some final destination. It's a journey. Every step, every choice is a chance to grow, to learn, and to strengthen our commitment to freedom, both the freedom inside of us and the freedom around us. And just like the Israelites, we're called to persevere, to fight, and to never give up on chasing true freedom, no matter what obstacles show up on the way. After so much suffering, exile, and oppression, the nation of Israel hit rock bottom, lost, disillusioned, with no hope of a better future. Centuries of slavery, persecution, and pain under the cruelest empires had crushed them. The promise of the promised land felt farther and farther away. Freedom that felt like an impossible dream. But then, something extraordinary happened. The prophets of Israel started speaking a message of hope, a promise of a brand new beginning. Isaiah especially spoke about a road, a path that would cut through the desert, a highway that would lead the people into a new era. And this wasn't just a physical road. No, it was a spiritual path, a road, the prophet said, that would change the history of Israel forever. But here's the crazy part. This road wasn't meant just for Israel. It was for the whole world. The prophets weren't talking about some temporary escape from oppression. They were announcing an eternal freedom, a redemption that would break through the borders of Israel and touch every single nation on earth. The road Isaiah spoke of, it was way more than a literal highway. It was this powerful metaphor for humanity's spiritual journey. This road would become the way for mankind to finally experience real freedom and lasting peace. But how? What would make this road so different, so life-changing from every other path humanity had ever walked? This promised road, this path the prophets talked about, came to life in the most unexpected way through the person of Jesus. But he didn't show up as some military leader or political savior like many were expecting. He wasn't a king in the way the Israelites had imagined, not someone who'd rise up, overthrow Rome, and free them from another empire. No, he came with a mission that went way, way deeper than any political liberation. Jesus came to free humanity from its deepest slavery, the slavery of sin and the slavery of death itself. This was the real turning point in history. Freedom was no longer about conquering land or fighting empires. It became a spiritual revolution, a transformation of the heart. By stepping into the waters of death, Jesus created a road that leads to real freedom. And it's not a road that depends on life's circumstances. It's a road that goes right through death itself, defeats it, and turns it into an act of redemption. Jesus went to the lowest, darkest place of human despair, the place where death and sin looked like they had the final word. And right there, he built a path of life, a freedom no one ever imagined was possible. And this road isn't just some spiritual idea or a nice teaching. It's real. It's a concrete act, a sacrifice, a price that was paid so that anyone who chooses can walk it. And Jesus' invitation to walk this road is an invitation to a journey of radical transformation. He's calling us to leave behind the old road, the road of slavery to sin, the road where death and despair hold us down, and step onto the road of true life. This is the gateway to real freedom, a freedom that doesn't depend on what's happening around you, but one that's born inside you, a freedom that starts with a transformed heart. Because as Jesus teaches, true freedom isn't the absence of struggles. It's the ability to live with purpose, to walk in God's calling, overcoming sin, overcoming death through the power of His love and His grace. He doesn't just offer a way out of the chains that hold us down. He invites us into an entirely new reality, a life where eternal joy, unconditional love, and true peace are not just ideas, but real. And this This is how the path of freedom, the one the prophet spoke of, becomes reality in the person of Jesus Christ. He isn't just the Savior of Israel, He's the Savior of all humanity, and through Him, we're all invited to walk the road of true freedom, a road that leads not just to personal salvation, but to the renewal of the entire world, a world where everyone is invited to experience the full, abundant life God has always dreamed for each of us. The journey of Israel is our journey. Their story repeats itself in our own lives over and over again. We've all faced moments of slavery, moments where we feel trapped. We've all walked through deserts full of fear, doubt, and loneliness. We've all longed for our own version of the promised land, that place of freedom, abundance, and peace. But just like Israel, we've got to remember something important. The road to real freedom demands courage. It demands trust. And above everything, it demands the decision to follow God's road. Right now, as followers of Jesus, we are living this journey. He is the way out of slavery, the way through the desert, and the way into the true promised land. And just like the Israelites, we're still facing new pharaohs and new battles, but we do it with this unshakable confidence that in the end, God always keeps His promises, and He will lead us to a place of real peace and real abundance. So I pray that you, just like the Israelites, find the courage to follow this road, even when it feels confusing, hard, or uncertain, because in the end, it's the road of life. The truth is, the real exodus is actually the journey of your own soul, a journey chasing freedom and redemption. And now, more than ever, you can see it. The story of the Exodus, it's not just some ancient story, it's a living story. It mirrors our own lives, the fight for freedom, the challenges of the desert, and the promise of the promised land. They're all still echoing through our journey today. So here's my invitation for you. Pause for a second and think about your own road. What are the barriers standing in front of you? What do you need to cross to finally step into real freedom? If this message touched your heart, if you've made it this far and felt the depth of this journey, go ahead and hit that like button to show that you're ready to walk this path of transformation. Drop a comment saying Amen if you believe, just like I do, that no matter how hard things get, freedom and victory are absolutely within reach. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can keep walking this journey with us, where together we'll uncover even more powerful, life-changing lessons straight from the Bible. Because when we walk in the light of truth, the journey is never lonely. We are all on this road together. See you in the next video.